So that was that. I went back and forth to London to see her time and time again over the next few months. I learned a few new things about her too. One day, I asked her why she was so well off financially. She told me about a guy she'd met at the office where she used to work, an elderly Japanese guy who was looking for a wife. Somehow, like me, he could see through May to her innocent side. And since he was a millionaire, he asked her what she wanted to make her happy. She told him, jokingly, that she wanted to study abroad and stay longer in Japan. And so he started putting large deposits of money into her account every month for her to do so. He also told her that he wanted her to be his wife one day, but more importantly, he just wanted her to be happy with her life. And this was his gift to her. I was quite taken aback by the coolness of this old guy, although I did make a joke about the old man and her in the sack together, how she'd have to pay back all the cash he'd given her. But she laughed and said that he was beyond that kind of thing and really just wanted a woman around the house to keep him company. A Japanese Hugh Hefner, if you will. So I said she should go for it, really. If that was all she wanted in life, to be rich, vacuous, but probably not satisfied, she should lead that kind of life. As for her now husband, it seemed that she hardly ever talked to him. In fact, she said, I was lucky that he sent me the letter, as it had been written in a kind of man's language, and not as if it was coming from a female like I'd intended it to be. Rick, you silly sod. Later on, I met some of her friends, and they invited us out to a pub that was open till the morning. Even though it was already past midnight and I was loaded, we decided to go. In fact, her friend had interrupted a bit of foreplay between May and me, which pissed me off no end, but I was quite glad to get out of the room, as May, and most Asians, as you find out, tend to heat their rooms up to boiling point, or so it seemed, and it was wearing me out. Though I think May enjoyed watching me strip down to my boxes, and thus refused to turn the heating off. Before we left, I met a friend of one of the other Japanese girls living in the same block of halls. Hiro. He was a funny Japanese guy who'd lived in New York before, obviously for far too long, judging by the spot-on Bronx accent he'd acquired. We talked for a while, and he said he'd come along to the bar and hang out with us. So there we were, like the group from Cheers, and Hiro was making me piss myself with laughter at the dirty Japanese slang he was teaching me, which had May rolling her eyes in displeasure, but she found some of it funny in the end. Hiro was chatting up some Italian, or maybe black babe, that had come with us, and May and I were just relaxing, laying back on some makeshift couch in the upper levels of the bar. It was just so good, like old times, with her cradled in my arms. The more I saw her, the more I felt like I really missed her real self, and I knew that I had to try to get it back out of her. I couldn't help but comment, May, you are perfect, aren't you? She gave me a warm smile. Shit, my heart nearly flew out of my chest. As the night wore on, we got tired and decided to go back to our place. Hiro was still making me chuckle, and then he started to talk about May. So, hey man, when she speaks in Japanese so well I can't tell the difference. She has some kind of boyfriend. I mean, do you think she can be like a one-night girl? She seems that way. She's not with you, is she? I said that she wasn't really. I mean, it was true. I didn't own May, and she'd probably be pissed if I went around telling people she was my girl. So I told Hiro that if he could get it, then he should go for it. He didn't seem much of a player anyhow, and I didn't think he'd make a move on her, or that she'd fancy him. I was unsure what I'd do even if he did, as my feelings for May were definitely mixed. I didn't see her as my personal property, and couldn't hold her back from being with whomever. Not yet. Saying that, I did feel a pang of apprehension. When we got back to her place, she'd put on some music, and they were all dancing drunkenly in her room. I laughed at first but then got so drunk that I began to join in. One drunken Indian babe started dancing next to me, and then wrapped her arms around me, while May watched. I had to admit, I enjoyed the fact that May looked a little jealous, watching me bump and grind with the girl. But then she got me right back, by dancing sexily with Hiro. I couldn't help but glance regularly at them both, and I realized I was getting jealous. All of a sudden, it caught up with me, and I said, "Get your hands off my girl, man," to Hiro, who did so immediately. I smiled straight afterward to counter the impulsive reaction, but he'd read the signals, and didn't bother her again for the rest of the night. I apologized to him alone later, and he said, laughing, "Hey, guy, if you liked the girl, you could have said that before. It doesn't matter, man, ha ha ha." Nice guy. I was a dickhead. I shrugged and smiled, telling him that, yeah, I liked her, but I wasn't 100%, and he understood. Yeah, she's this kind of girl, it seems. I can tell already, like fire, so be careful. Maybe she's just not for a girlfriend, man. Yeah, that made me think, but I grabbed May, and soon, we were swirling around the room to a slow song, while Hero had paired up with another girl. For the first time, I really felt comfortable with May, and as the music played and I smelled her light jasmine perfume while we spun around and around, it felt like a scene from the movies, where the crowd disappears, and it was just me and her, nothing else, oblivious to the rest of the world. Somehow, in that moment, I realized how much May really meant to me, even though she wasn't right for me. You can't help falling in love with the wrong people sometimes. Anyway, soon the little soiree, that's how you spell it, was over, and it was just me, May, and this shagadelic little Indian chick who was dancing even after I'd stopped the music. Suddenly, the Indian fell to the ground, obviously totally loaded, and May looked anxiously on, while I made sure the girl was okay. Once she realized the chick was cool, May laid back onto the bed, and I picked up the boozed-up Indian carefully and carried her to her room. When I came back, May was waiting on the bed for me, looking at me lustfully. But that night, I felt like I couldn't just be my casual self. Things with May had gone on for too long. I didn't want to be one of the many guys she'd been with. I knew I was special to her. She'd even told me. I went to the toilet and looked thoughtfully at my reflection in the mirror. I'd guessed it was crunch time. When I came back, she was asleep. As I laid beside her, I looked towards her face, wondering if I really knew this person, not knowing. I saw her without the cruelty, without the heartlessness, just a beautiful, innocent face. Not caring. I spoke softly. "Do you know how much I truly love you, May?" Not really expecting an answer, I soon fell asleep next to her, but her arms were around me as I drifted off into the blackness, too tired to move anymore. Then came the next morning, and May told me she wanted me, but there was just no way I could do it. After years of sex without question, I just couldn't do it this time. I know it sounds like a corny feel-good ending to an American Rites of Passage movie, but it was that kind of situation. I finally realized that deep down, May couldn't love me, couldn't love anyone. Sure, she cared for me, but she couldn't express anything even remotely comparable to love, real love. Some people are just like that. They don't possess that emotion. Perhaps she was worn down by some shitty past. Sex was as far as it went between us, and I just couldn't be the kind of guy who would screw her and leave her like she wanted me to be. I really wanted her to feel something special towards me. God damn it. I was ready to commit to this girl, who honestly meant a great deal to me. I was pretty sure that, actually, she hadn't been seeing other guys at all, probably just using rich assholes to buy her stuff, and then dumping them. Here and now, I didn't feel like making it with her. It's true what they say in the books about sex being 90% mental and 10% physical. I don't know. It was a new experience for me not being able to make out on demand. I felt awkward, but soon relaxed beside her, uncaring. I'd been with a variety of playgirls, but May, well, she was the one that finally got me. She'd done the impossible, and made me think about sex as something more than just a thing that bored people do to pass the time. For the first time in my life, I couldn't get a boner because a girl didn't love me. She was pissed, to say the least, at my actions. Although I spoke to May through a few emails, I eventually broke the whole thing off when I realized she was never going to change, and she never did. She never got married, and she never had a true family. The end. Oh, I've just got to tell this joke I heard the other day. So, there's an elderly couple who go to the pub where they first met, and they start talking all romantic to each other. The bloke's like, "I remember, we met 50 years ago in here. And then we went to that fence around the corner, and had our first shag against it, didn't we? Do you fancy doing it again for old time's sake, love?" Wife is like, "Oh, you're so romantic, Henry, okay then." So off they hop. And this guy, who was listening at the other table thinks, Bloody hell. Can't miss out watching two old duffers at it. And follows them out 5 minutes later to see them holding onto the fence while they go at it like a couple of teenagers. He's amazed at how much energy they've got. And 40 minutes later, they fall to the floor, exhausted. The bloke walks back into the pub, shaking his head in amazement, and a little while later, they come back in to get a drink. He steps up to the old man and says, "Excuse me, don't mean to be rude or anything, but bloody hell, have you got some energy for an old geezer? Would you mind telling me your secret, so that I can be like that when I'm old?" The old guy replies, "It's no secret, son. The difference is, 50 years ago, that fence wasn't electrified,